obviously Last Dance, it's a different type of documentary, right? No sports are going on in this world, but how have you react to the first 4 episodes of Last Dance documentary?
It's really brought everything that we need right now. There's no live sports. We have the NFL draft. We've had WWE. We've had UFC. No fans, but that just hasn't been cutting it. Like this is, like I'm in full preparation. I went to Buffalo Wild Wings today. Got some wings for this. Treating it as if we're in the middle of the playoffs right now. But it's been great. Each episode has just left us on a cliffhanger. It's like, oh, what's going to happen next? And I was actually listening to Colin Cowherd earlier in the week, and he was saying, since he has so many connections over at ESPN, still since he used to work there,
Yeah.
that the episodes are going to get more and more intense, and it's going to be like more and more crazy every week. Especially, he said like parts like 7 and 8 are going to
Ooh.
be the most intense. So this definitely brought a lot more. I think they're getting a little bit more in depth, and I think there's a lot of stuff in that 97-98 season that we didn't know about, and a lot of more stuff's going to come out. And this is going to be like the OJ documentary. It starts off slow, parts 3 and 4, win the Oscar. I think they won the Oscar, and it's going to be one of the best 30 for 30s we have.
Hmm. And that's the thing too, this is being treated like almost like a live event, like if this was the Super Bowl or the World Series or NBA Finals, just because there is no sports. And just to reiterate that point, I mean, people are reacting to it on Twitter, but it's weird to me because at least like for a live sporting event, that's the first time it's happened. Like when Ray Allen hit that shot, it was like that hadn't been done before. But this is all stuff that is in history, and I could say like for sure our parents got to live through this. We were pretty young. I know you were 93 or 94.
94, December 94.
Okay, so yeah, so we were both like 4 or 5 when this all happened, so we were too young to remember it. But our parents, older cousins, uncles, aunts, they kind of got to live through this and see this. So but it is cool. Like the one thing I love about the 30 for 30 documentaries is it gives us a good portrayal of what happened in the past, because obviously we couldn't live through it. And it's one thing to watch like you know 10 highlight videos of Larry Bird and maybe like 2 full games and be like, oh, this is my idea of Larry Bird. But it's another thing to watch 10 years of Larry Bird or 10 years of Michael Jordan. So it's cool that they're able to condense it for us as much as they can and give us a pretty good picture about it.
Exactly. And I'll be sitting around with my dad's friends, and they'll talk about the Pistons bad boys, the Miami Notre Dame matchups, and all those great 80s matchups. And I'll join the discussion with them, and they're like, wait a minute, you weren't born, what are you talking about? And I'm like, that's the beauty of 30 for 30s. It's nothing like you mentioned. It's not like we were watching this live, we weren't there. But to see the replays, you don't really know what's going to happen unless you've done some research or you've watched some replays or something like that. Like I'm learning tonight that the Bulls lost to the Pistons 4 straight years. I thought it was once or twice, but they lost to them. No, excuse me. They lost to them 3 straight years in 87, 88, 89, and 90.
Hmm.
And in 91, they came back, and what's motivating is that after 89, or I'm sorry, 90, they got stronger the day after they got eliminated. They didn't go on vacation. And in 91, that's when they beat the Pistons for the first time, beat the Lakers, and went on to win the first championship.
Yeah, and what's cool about this documentary too, I think you see of a lot of how Jordan's story lines up with LeBron's story, right? The first few years, special players, changing the league, scoring titles, but they can't win the playoffs. And I think, for Jordan, obviously it was the Pistons, you just mentioned it, and for LeBron it was the Celtics. But I think the biggest thing is, it was cool that it was like a team collaborative effort. And it was like as soon as they lost that last time, it was like, all right, we're gonna go to work. Like there's no vacation, versus LeBron who just, decided to go to Miami. And nothing against that. Like, but I just think when you compare them head to head, Jordan's always gonna have that point in the argument, is that he didn't leave a team. He was like, hey, let's get better, guys, and let's work towards this goal, versus LeBron like, oh, I'm going to jump to a different team and now we could beat the Celtics, and, that kind of thing.
Exactly. It's a different mindset they had back then, and definitely a different physicality of basketball. I was watching with my fiance Chelsea, and she was just astonished. Like, how were they allowed to fight back then? It's like they were playing hockey. It was crazy. I would love to see that back in the game nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
You go down the lane and then someone just slightly taps you, it's a foul.
Hmm.
But you were going to the bad. If you were going down the lane, Bill Laimbeer or Dennis Rodman were not going to let you get off easy. You were going to get hacked. and you were going to come out, I think Dennis Rodman said, like, I want to break your nose. I want to get my nose broken. I want to get banged up. And that's what made the NBA great back then.
Yeah, it's truly a different style of basketball. The one thing I will say though, it wasn't always. I mean, at least for me, first point I want to get to is Phil Jackson. You hear a guy, he wins 11 championship NBA titles, NBA finals, and coached two different great players, Jordan and Kobe. And I always thought, hey, he's this hard-nosed guy. He's like Popovich, right? Really stern, but he's actually very laid back. And I think episode or part 4 of the documentary did a really good job of portraying that, where he's almost more of a hippie, closer to a Bill Walton than he is the Popoviches and the Bill Belichicks.
Exactly. And his portrayal of his first years when he was saying like, "Oh, he's on acid" or something like that, one of his teammates, like, and then you see him in the car, and he's just like, having a good time. That's not what you would picture, like, like you mentioned, a Greg Popovich or even Bill Belichick. They were just like stern guys all their life. But Phil Jackson, lived his best life and got his opportunity, and 11-time champion.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, too, after watching episode 3, the part that highlighted Dennis Rodman, man, I hope to be as good as at my job, whatever it is in the future, to where I could just, hey, ask my boss, I need 48 hours to recoup, go to Vegas or go wherever I need to. Maybe for me, it's probably like, camping somewhere in like Colorado, but like just give me 48 hours, not even, and you're still going to pay me, and I'll just jump right back into the mix of things,
Exactly, and that was one of the trailers they used when this documentary was getting promoted back in 2018. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if Dennis Rodman just took off and no one heard of him. Like, no, he actually said, like, I need some time off. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go to Las Vegas. And Michael Jordan said he's not coming back in time. And that was the funniest part. Like, they had to go to Las Vegas, get him, and then he's rolling up in his pajama bottoms, a t-shirt. And then Michael Jordan has just a look of disgust on his face. But what was even more amazing is that, they were saying like, oh, run slow. We need to get Dennis Rodman back into shape. But yet he was the one like running fast the day after he got back. And that was portrayed in his 30 for 30 that, he was able to go out late the night before, not get any sleep. Mm-hmm. And he would show up and he'd have the most energy out of anybody, on par with Michael Jordan. He's a different figure. And, as you mentioned, I'd love to have something like that, be good and have a bunch of energy.
Right. No, yeah. It's like one of those freak of nature kind of things, because the fact that he could be so committed to the party life and then still the next morning, the next day, be very committed to basketball. I mean, I'm sure, you played high school sports too, and just sports at different levels. You meet those guys who, they'll party the night before, and then obviously the day of the game, they're hungover and they're just not the same, and they don't take it as serious. Rodman wasn't one of those guys, and I think that's cool that Jackson and Jordan both understood that, and they're like, hey, we're going to let you do your thing because we can trust you. You're going to come back to the game, and you're going to be 100% focused,
Exactly, and that's what made that Bulls team special. You had a little bit of everything putting in that team. But no, this 30 for 30 has definitely lived up to the expectations. And now Sunday at 6 o'clock, just all of us sports fans, we're there. We're ready to sit down for 2 hours uninterrupted live content of ESPN.
Yeah, it's brought a new meaning to Sunday Funday, right?
Exactly.
So I did want to ask you too, because I was thinking about it with some friends, and I actually wrote an article too recently. Other sports documentaries we need that, they can go very in depth. Did you have anything that come into mind when, 20 years from now and we have our kids and we're like, they're asking about a certain athlete, but, hey, let's watch this documentary about so-and-so because this really portrays the picture.
To stay in basketball, we're going to need one on Kobe Bryant. We're going to need one on LeBron James. But going to baseball, I think, the steroid era is going to be important. Just that article that you sent over to me kind of got my mind thinking. I'm like, what stories am I going to want the next generation to see? I think definitely the steroid era. For the NFL, what the concussion, had an impact on sports. We've kind of seen some, like I think that movie with Will Smith. I can't have it. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I think it's called Concussion.
Exactly, Concussion. And we had the junior say out 30 for 30, but I think that's going to be important to talk about. We're probably going to have another, this was the XFL. In the time we're living right now, we're going to have a 30 for 30 on how sports were halted right now.
Hmm.
Because, just as I've been saying, I've been asked my whole life, and I'm sure you have, like, what if there's no more sports one day? What are you going to do? And I've always said, that's not going to happen. Like,
Yeah.
we're always going to have sports. Like, this is decades and centuries of tradition. Here we are. So I think that
Yeah.
story is going to be important to tell.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think with the XFL thing, they could probably throw in the AAF and just be like, hey, both these football leagues flopped. And I also think too it'd be important to talk about Derrick Rose for one, because I mentioned in the article, but just to reiterate that point, because I thought Derrick Rose was honestly on his way to be one of those top five, at least top 10 all-time point guards in those first 3-4 years. I mean, he was just so explosive. I always thought Russell Westbrook had a similar game, but he was a little bit more erratic, right? Rose was more like a polished version of Westbrook. And at least of recent, whether it's on Twitter or on Instagram, I see a lot of people kind of, they have polls and like comparing so guards now to Derrick Rose. And I'm just like, yo, you guys don't know who Derrick Rose is. Like that was only 10, 12 years ago when he first came into the league.
Exactly. And I remember like that 2009 series, the Celtics and the Bulls, where the Celtics were coming off the championship in 2008. And that series went to 7 games. I think a game 4 of that series went to quadruple overtime. And Derrick Rose won Rookie of the Year. And then 2010, he starts to rise up. 2011, he wins MVP. 2012, they lose. And I think they got upset by the Philadelphia 76ers that year. I think that was right before the trust the process era. So, even who knows? We could see another documentary of the Bulls in a couple of years.
Mm-hmm. And then you're right. Going back to the pandemic thing of COVID-19, I know you as a Laker fan had to be feeling really good about the Lakers and their hopes this year to win NBA Finals. But that's the thing is like, if we're not able to continue the playoffs and conclude the 2019-2020 season, it's going to be like that what if season, whether it's the Lakers, Clippers. I'm sure there's a lot of Toronto fans that want to feel like they can defend their title. Milwaukee too, in the Greek Freak. Boston even had an outside chance. Denver, all those little teams too in the Western Conference that were competing for those 3, 4, 5 seeds. All those teams probably felt like they had a good shot. And I think this this year was a little bit more wide open. Obviously, with the Cavaliers obviously falling with LeBron and Kyrie both leaving. Also, you had the Warriors with Curry and Klay Thompson injured most of the season. Kevin Durant just left. So this was like a pretty wide open season compared to the last few years.
It was, and I think you hit it right on the spot. We didn't have the Warriors this year. The West was wide open, the East was wide open, and we were just coming off the Lakers playing the Bucks on Friday night on ESPN. I remember watching that game, and we won. And then on Sunday, the Lakers played the Clippers. We beat them again, and I said, "Oh man, we're catching fire at the right time." And then unfortunately, the season gets suspended that Thursday, I think it was, or that Wednesday. Yeah, that Wednesday night. And it actually happened here in Sacramento. They were saying like this could be the last NBA game for a while. And I remember tuning in. I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch it. Who cares who's playing right now? It was actually Zion playing the Kings. And then unfortunately they called it. And, fortunately the rest is history. Who knows when we're coming back.
Mm-hmm. And to me at least, and I'll ask you your point of view too, but just it happened so fast. They canceled the NBA season, obviously after Rudy Gobert was announced that he had COVID-19. That same weekend, I was supposed to go to spring training with some friends, have a good time there, watch some baseball. But that Thursday they canceled spring training and everything followed. Pro days were canceled. They still managed to have the draft, which I thought was really cool. But as far as everything else, sports-wise, NHL season canceled. Then you saw slowly the international leagues too for soccer; those were starting to get canceled, and it just really, I guess, how was your initial reaction to the NBA, and then first the NBA getting canceled, and then every other sport following?
Well, yeah, as you know, like I do work in professional sports, the Sac Republic, repping the gear right now everywhere I go. And we were having meetings about it weeks prior, saying like, hey, like this is happening because we have such a great relationship with UC Davis Medical Center here in Sacramento, which is one of the best hospitals in the nation. So they were saying like, hey, like this could get bad. You guys might get in a spot where you're going to postpone our season. And that even that week before we had our opening night, and we were saying like, hey, like we're gonna have the game. And in my head, I'm like, they're not gonna stop the season. Sports aren't gonna stop. Like that's not gonna happen. And so I was in complete in denial. And then when it really hit me, it was that Wednesday where the NCAA tournament announced they were going to play without fans. And I was at my desk and I put my head down and I said, now the bricks are going to start to fall.
Hmm.
Now, I knew the NBA was going to act fast. And then unfortunately, when Rudy Gobert came down with COVID-19, that's when everything kind of shifted over. And they were still talking about playing the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
It took them 2 days to say, like, hey, we're not going to play this. But I knew it was over. I knew they were saying a month. I knew it was going to be longer than a month. And and NBA facilities, they are apparently going to start opening on May 1st, but it's going to be a state by state scenario when teams can start practicing again.
Yeah, and it's man, as soon as the NCAA, I guess like the NCAA was a big landmark for me too, because the March Madness is such a big moneymaker, right? And so and you know how corrupt the NCAA is, and they're gonna try and get any game out there that they can. So the fact that when they said we're not doing this year, I was like, oh snap! Like that, I guess that to me too left like a pretty big landmark on myself. It's just like wow, as a fan, as a sports fan, you know the NCAA is gonna try and make anything happen because it's a big profit for them. You know, they were trying to even do like a best instead of 64 teams, then cut it down to 16 or even 8 teams. So, just narrow it just to try and get something out there. And, everything just happened so fast. Give me your best case scenario and worst case scenario for the conclusion of sports, like whether it's, well, I believe the NCAA, they're already canceling the rest of their season, but for NBA, NHL, and some other sports that were in the middle of their season right now.
Well, with the NHL, I think they're going to go with the method of choosing 4 arenas in states that aren't too as affected with COVID-19. And they're going to have all 4 divisions stay in this bubble and go to the arena and come back and not go anywhere else. There's going to be no fans. And I think the NBA is going to adapt this model. And then I think baseball is going to eventually run with the Florida, Arizona. I think they had Texas in there as well as a
Mm-hmm.
scenario. So I think for those 3 sports, including baseball, I don't see a scenario where we're going to have fans. Football, they keep talking about like, hey, we're going to play college football, we're going to play NFL with fans, but I think you saw Notre Dame come out 2 weeks ago, and they said if we're not having classes, we're not going to play games.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're already setting the precedent, other schools are going to follow. So, I've heard various reports. I'm not one who likes to watch the news. I find the news depressing,
Oh
and I'm not
yeah.
I'm not going to get into my political views on your show. But I don't watch any newscasts. I just listen to facts, and I said, hey, when this ends, and they have the stay-at-home orders lifted, that's when I'm like, okay, how can we continue with sports?
Mm-hmm.
So it's there's so many different scenarios, but I think that's what's going to happen. I see football not playing with fans, unfortunately. I just don't see how they're going to do this without vaccine. And even in my business, working in the USL and partnering with the MLS, we have a bunch of our ticket holders saying like, hey, even if you guys do allow fans to come back, like a lot of people aren't going to want to come back. A lot of people are going to be scared.
Yeah.
So there's that scenario as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know for a fact too when they first opened the gates, whether it's at Angel Stadium or at to the Rams at the Coliseum, I for sure is gonna give like at least a 3 month grace period because unless we're all vaccinated, unless there's like 100%, nobody has it anymore. But even then, we could still be carrying it and not have any symptoms, and then pass it on to our grandparents or to elderly people at the stadiums. And I was talking about with some friends. Stadiums are not the cleanest of places, right? Especially
Nope.
football, fourth quarter. You go to the bathrooms. I'm sure people aren't even. It's just mind blowing to me thinking back on it. I remember being a kid going to football games, baseball games, and you see people like go to the restroom and not even wash their hands before they rush back to their seat because it's a good game or something like that. So, I think for me, I'm gonna try and I'm gonna still watch sports, but I'm not gonna be there live in person, even if tickets are super cheap. For me, it's gonna be hard to trust. But I think also too, for at least like NBA, MLB, NHL, it gets to a certain point. If you keep pushing further and further back, let's say they are able to continue the NBA playoffs in August, but how does that affect the next season, right? In MLB, same thing. I was talking about it with my friends on a podcast that I produced for a friend. If they want to do a 162 game season still for the MLB, I feel like that's really unrealistic because if you start anytime after June, let's say you start July 1st or on the 4th of July, you're going to go all the way into December and potentially even January. Spring training, pitchers report I think early February, right? And other players start coming in February. So obviously there'd have to be some grace period. I'm just interested to see. I'm trying to be an optimistic too, but I think almost it's going to be interesting to see how this affects the following season, right? Because I think, yes, they can finish the NBA finals, but at what cost to the 2021, 2022 NBA season? And same thing for the MLB and same thing for the NHL.
Exactly. And I hope we're not in that scenario. We got to, have faith in, our scientists, our doctors, that they're going to find a vaccine. And, hopefully by 2021, we can look back on this time and say like, hey, that was a rough period, but now we're back and we have fans in attendance. But stadiums are going to have to change. There's definitely going to have to be a little bit more, as you mentioned, a little bit more of a cleaner protocol. And people are high fiving each other all the time, like that. You have 40,000 people in a stadium, like that's not very ideal coming out of a virus that has completely taken over our country. So,
Mm-hmm.
this year I think it's going to be tough, as you mentioned, but I think by 2021, if there is a vaccine, we're going to have fans in the crowd again,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to change the landscape of sports, but it's going to change the landscape of everything right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think it goes beyond the country. I mean, they canceled the Olympics this summer, and I think it'll change how the world is as far as just in bigger, larger places. Because I think it's gonna make it's weird because I my mom was a big clean freak growing up, so I feel like more people after all this is gonna be more of a clean freak, I guess, because of the pandemic, and people are gonna take more serious, not just about washing your hands, but I feel like everywhere you go, hand sanitizer, right? They might. I was thinking like go to a baseball game or a football game, and they might even give you a hand like sanitizer bottle as you walk into the stadium, just so it's like more convenient. Because I think that's it's just I don't know. I guess it's tough because the COVID-19 is something you don't see, and like I said earlier, not everyone may have it and show symptoms, but some of us could be carriers. And if we do go back 2021, I would hate to see a small outbreak again once we return to fandom or fans returning back to stadiums. You see a little outbreak because people are being unclean and people are carrying it but not having symptoms.
Yeah, definitely a lot of scenarios up in the air, but we hope for the best. We think you've always been one to keep a positive attitude as long as I've known you, and I think that's how I am myself. We can sit back like, there's no sports, and I think you have me on Instagram, and I was in Buffalo Wild Wings today, and
Mm-hmm.
I took a video of all empty screens. I was like, man, but I'm like, no, I can't think like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they'll be back one day. This is for the best. This is bigger than sports, and we'll get through this time.
Mm-hmm. Is there any place you're really crave, whether it's sports related or not, or it could be B Dubs or a food restaurant? Is there any place that you're really craving to go back to once this is all over?
There's that place, Bull Wings, I was telling you about in Elk
Mm,
Grove. I'm looking forward to just going back there once time is right, sitting down, having a nice. They have chilled beers, kind of like Twin Peaks, with the
okay.
frost coming out. Better wings than Buffalo Wild Wings. Hopefully, no one calls me out on that.
Mhm.
But that's one of my favorite places. They always do it right, with the TVs, for the best game. They always have the sound on, no music. It's a great environment, a lot of locals, and it's one of my favorite places. So when you come up to Sacramento, we'll have to come up and give them the free advertising right now. So if to show them this.
Hey, okay, of course. Yeah, sounds
Yeah.
good.
How
And
about you?
for me, just no restaurant in particular, but just going to a restaurant and sitting down and eating in the restaurant, like more of a fancier, not fancier, but just a sit down waiter, takes your order, that kind of thing. Because the takeout thing is cool. Don't get me wrong. I love supporting the small businesses around me that I have, really enjoyed even pre COVID-19. But just, the fact that I have to eat in my car or take it back home and eat it or eat in the parking lot, it's kind of inconvenient. Like I miss those times where you could just sit down. Hey, what would you like tonight? I would like this, blah, blah, blah. That whole interaction and even just the ambience of sitting around other people. I'm a big people watcher. I like people watching. So even that, like I miss.
Exactly. But one day, right? One day.
Yeah, of course, one day. So I did want to ask you. You brought it up earlier because you're working higher up for the FC Republic. What I guess how are you still? Let me reword this. What are they still having you do during this COVID-19, the social distancing?
Well, what I do is group sales. So I'm reaching out to youth sports, churches, performance groups, and try and get them to utilize our fan assets. One of my better sales is selling halftime performances to gymnastics, cheerleading teams, and they have a ticket requirement. So that's how we hold them accountable to sell a certain amount of tickets. But it's a pretty easy sell. So I'm just getting them excited, like, hey, if it's not this year, let's come out next year. So they actually haven't had us do any phone outreach for the first couple of days. We were still trying. I was able to make a few sales here and there, but last thing we want to do is give off the wrong message that hey, we're still trying to make sales when people are losing their jobs. Some people are losing their lives. So we cut that aspect, and it was more of just like reaching out to our customers saying like, hey, how you doing? How's your family doing? Is everything all right? And especially with the season ticket holders, making sure they're okay. And we've actually been doing really good staying involved in the community. We have a great partnership with Rayleigh's, which for those of you who don't know, it's a grocery store up here. And they've donated baskets of food for the elderly. So all of our front offices got together, taken over a territory in Sacramento, and people can not nominate their grandparents, their neighbors, their elderly aunt and uncles, and we actually drop it off at their doorstep. Knock, go wait in our car, make sure they pick it up successfully. So that's been had a huge impact on me. It feels great to help out people who really need to stay inside at this time. We're very vulnerable to this disease. So that's been keeping me busy as well. But as we're in an advantage right now. We are transitioning into Major League Soccer by 2022. So the MLS actually announced that our schedule is still on time. So that was a great article to share with some of my prospects. Selling out to businesses, trying to have them excited when they come back to their employees, take them out to a match, and say like, hey, like this is our last season playing at this stadium. We're gonna have a new stadium and play in professional soccer in a couple of years. So thankfully, the Republic has been great to us. As of now, nobody has been threatened to, get their hours cut or lose their job like you've seen other teams in the news do. So it's a great organization to work for, and hopefully, once this is all over, we come out stronger.
That's great to hear, man. I did want to ask you too, because they are making the jump from the USL to MLS. You said next season, correct? So what's just the buzz around your fellow coworkers and fans across the city? Because right now they only have one professional sports team, the Sacramento Kings. Now they're going to get a second one in FC Republic.
Exactly. So I've been with the organization for about 2 months. Prior to this job, I was working for the Stockton Heat. It's the AHL, quote unquote, AAA affiliate to the Calgary Flames. So this has been a little bit of a better market to sell into. It's really, really hard to sell hockey in the Central Valley, but it's a lot easier to sell soccer in Sacramento. So there's definitely been a lot of hype. Sales is still sales. You got to like convince people like, hey, this is actually happening. But a lot of people are like, hey, I haven't heard of this. Like, and then there's some people who are skeptical saying like, hey, like you guys got to start building that stadium, then I'll believe it. So we're set to have a groundbreaking here in June, which was supposed to have a lot of people. I doubt that's going to happen now, but it's apparently still supposed to happen with at least our C-level executives. Hopefully they invite the rest of the front office to socially distance and come out to the ceremony. But I think with us now staying really prevalent and very active in the community, a lot of people are starting to take notice like, hey, they're about to be on par with the Sacramento Kings as far as a major professional sports team here in Sacramento. So there's definitely been a lot more brand awareness. I'm starting to see a lot more Sac Republic gear around town. Bars are starting to have jerseys, the Sac Republic logo up in their restaurants and bars, respectfully. So it's cool. It's great to be a part of. We still have this season, if we return, and next year in the USL playing at Cal Expo, which is the fairgrounds here in Sacramento. But we'll have that new stadium in 2022.
I did want to ask, where are they going to build that new stadium?
So if you're familiar with going up on I-5 toward Natomas, if you're going toward the airport,
Okay.
once you leave Sacramento area and start heading toward that way on I-5 going north, if you see on your right side, there's going to be these old rail yard and lumber buildings. They're going to keep those there because they're like historic landmarks in the city of Sacramento, but it is just uncharted, undeveloped land. that our owner purchased, and they're actually going to build a stadium there. It's going to be a 21,000 seat stadium
Wow.
that's going to get built up. So it's going to be right by the freeway. So when you're leaving Sacramento, you're going to see Golden One. You're going to see stadium. When you're coming into Sacramento, going on I-5 South, you're going to see our stadium. You're going to see Golden One. So it's really going to develop the Sacramento skyline and bring something special.
That's nice. So it's gonna be is it gonna be past the Sleep Train Arena in Natomas or a little closer in?
A little closer in.
Okay.
Um, yeah, this is going to be right on the outskirts of downtown. It's going to be about a 5 minute drive from downtown.
Okay.
And the rumor is, once they work with some developers to help, buy land and to sell to businesses, it's going to be nonstop restaurants and bars from this stadium all the way down to Golden One, which is the rumor. I can't confirm that, but that's what I've heard. So that would really develop the Sacramento economy.
That's great to hear, man. I know what Golden One, or I was able to see a little bit what Golden One did for Sacramento in the downtown area. So I'm excited to see what, Republic FC and the new stadium brings to Sacramento, especially too, because, I've been to a few soccer games at Cal Expo. Is it Papa Murphy's Park or is that not a thing anymore?
No, it's still Pop Murphy's
Okay.
Park at Cal Expo.
Okay.
You might have seen it, or I think you did go to a match there.
Hmm.
You did, right?
Yeah, I went to a few
Yeah.
games in the supporter section too, and that's so much fun.
Oh, exactly. That has like the European soccer field to it. But unfortunately, now a lot of people are saying like, "What is this?" Like,
Mm,
it is a makeshift stadium at the fairgrounds. You can't see it from the freeway. You don't know we play there, so
right.
that's a little that's a little difficult to sell right now. So we're just promoting the heck out of this new stadium.
Yeah, and that's good. I mean, hopefully they do put that fan supporter section too, because I got to go to a few LAFC games, and man, that's a whole game changer when you're able to be in that part of the section. I highly encourage anyone who's never been to an MLS game, if you're going to go for the first time, maybe intimidating, but go sit in that supporter section just because you're going to get into the chants. It gets you more into the game, and it's cool because when they score a game, when they score a goal, they're throwing beers, water, and just it's just going crazy. It's a lot of fun.
Exactly. And what the MLS has been able to do in America in general is just, nothing short of amazing. Um, in California alone, we've seen the LA, since 1994, we've seen the LA Galaxy, the Earthquakes, Chivas USA, who were here from 2005 to 2014. They folded. That's when LAFC came in. Now we have the Sac Republic. But we've had 15 MLS teams I'm sorry, 21 expansion teams here in North America get expanded since 2005. So MLS is really starting to put their name into the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, and the NHL, and make it Big Five. It's not going to be the Big Four anymore.
Hmm.
The television ratings has been great. It went down a little bit this year, but actually the top five games have been the top five most watched games for the MLS have been on Fox since 2018.
Hmm.
And they've had compared to the NBA and NFL, it's still small, but they've all had 1 million viewers, which
Hmm.
that's been game changer here in America. And this is a little bit of my hot take. You know, we I remember watching the LA Galaxy and LAFC last year when they
Hmm.
still had Zlatan. It was a big matchup, Carlos Vela versus Zlatan,
Hmm.
and it ended in a draw. I mean, you as a sports fan, as an American sports fan, can respect like we don't end in ties here.
Right.
What are your thoughts on potentially the MLS, going against centuries of soccer tradition and doing what hockey did after the lockout and getting rid of ties instead of having an overtime and then a penalty kick at the end of the game?
Yeah, I think it'd be great to have like the penalty kicks just like they go into shootout in hockey, especially for a regular season. I mean, I get the whole I do understand from like a international league standpoint, ties count as 1 point, wins three. If you lose, you get zero. So I understand that like a ties, but see if you incentivize a tie, reward someone for tying, then people are going to be settling for ties, right? So I think it does encourage teams to play for the win more if you do get rid of ties and it's like, hey, we have to go into PKs. Granted, sometimes PKs aren't always the best representation of who's the better team. That's why I think in the playoffs, like they already do, you have to implement like extra time, the 2 periods of extra time first before you go into PKs. But I think it would be great just because I don't really like seeing ties at all. Not at all. Not even football, because there is still that rule, but you just rarely see it.
Exactly. And, other countries, I love that they, still stick by the traditions. But I think, with other sports here, besides football, you got to crown a winner. I mean, if you want to get involved in kind of the North American sports scene, that also includes Canada as well. I think you have to have a winner, and that's what's going to grow the soccer popularity. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people would disagree with me and say like, oh, you're breaking so much tradition, but I think that would grow soccer's popularity tremendously. And that's what it did for the NHL once they came out of the lockout. I mean, their viewership went up. They've expanded 2 teams, and they're actually going to have 32. They're going to have more teams in North America than the MLB and the NBA and the
Wow.
MLS once NHL Seattle gets formed in 2022, I believe it is. So,
Okay.
that both the MLS and the NHL are coming for it's going to be tough to catch the NFL and the NBA, but who knows? I think
Yeah.
the MLB could be maybe number 5 in years to come.
Yeah, and if I had to put stock or like invest some money in any league, it'd definitely be the MLS, just because I think it's probably the lowest price right now. There's not a lot of money or people like investing into it, but I think, and this is me trying to be an optimist, but I just think with football, we mentioned it earlier, and more concussions. I think more and more information about the long-term effects of concussions are going to really hurt the NFL. I would say in 15 to 20 years. So if the MLS continues to grow at a steady pace, I don't maybe see it taking over the NFL, but it's going to be right up there, at least top 3. And as soon as the NFL drops, because we're already going to see a drop in the next 5 to 10 years of kids not playing it at the youth level, then at the high school level. So it's only going to dilute the talent at the college and professional level. So you are going to see leagues like the NHL, and I think specifically the MLS, because right now it's getting really overlooked. But in 20 years, MLS is going to be like the next. It might be bigger than baseball and basketball. Who knows?
Exactly. And I think everywhere you go now, soccer leagues are just getting bigger and bigger, and youth football is getting smaller and smaller. I work with a lot of youth soccer teams here in the greater Sacramento area, and some of these recreation clubs have 2 to 3 thousand kids playing. I mean, that is just crazy. And AYSO is obviously pretty big down in Southern California. And now they have Orange County SC there in Irvine, so it's really taken over the West Coast, and hopefully the whole country catches on. And it's sad to see. Football has obviously had a great impact here in North America. I know they played a couple games in Toronto as well, and they were starting to play games in overseas in London. But I think definitely the concussion protocol is going to get a lot more strict. And unfortunately, I think we're going to see a lot more cases of players now. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Rob Gronkowski who said it best when they were saying, like, has the NFL become too soft? And he said, like, then why do I feel like I'm in a car accident every Monday after a game?
Yeah, dang. Whew, that says it all. And going back to soccer, it's one of those sports I definitely wish I got to play more as a little kid. Just because soccer, you learn a lot too from an athletic standpoint, especially like foot agility and balance. I think I'm pretty uncoordinated. Like I've able to like work on my coordination skills through high school and college, but as a kid, I was always like off balance. I think soccer really teaches that and stresses that a lot.
I think so too, and it is a fall sport, so it could be coming for football sooner than later. But I think even my high school personally, I think they've even with a high school of even 4,000 kids, they can't even field a freshman team anymore.
Mm,
So you went to Villa Park High School, right? Or
yeah.
Villa Park, yeah.
Mhm.
And did you had a freshman team when you were there?
For boys soccer, I believe we did, but I
Uh,
believe for girls we didn't. It was just JV and varsity.
I'm sorry, for football.
Oh, for football, yes, we had.
Mhm.
Yeah, football's still going strong at Villa Park. I was lucky to play at the beginning of a great head coach over there, and Coach Ansich. And I think this past season they didn't win league, but that like stopped 10 years in a row where they were winning league after league. So or winning league championship after league championship. So they have no problem getting kids. They still have like 50, 60 kids in their freshman football program.
Yeah, and how big was high school was that?
How big of a high school we had?
Yeah.
I know when we graduated, it was about 8 to 9 thousand kids.
Okay.
Yeah. So I believe in football, they're D7 now. But for the most sports, I mean, they're kind of like they're not the modern days, obviously, or the Corona Centennials, but they're pretty higher up there.
Yeah, those were our powerhouses. You had Mater Dei in your backyard. I had Corona Centennial as our rival.
Hmm.
I like to always say when when people say, "Where'd you go to high school?" and I always say, "Have you ever heard of Corona Centennial?"
Hmm.
They're like, "Yeah, yeah, that great football program. Did you go there?" No, I went to the rival high school. Played them every year since 1995, and we've never beat them. So
Dang.
that's our little quote to fame right there for a
Yeah.
national powerhouse, Corona
Hmm.
Centennial.
But having broadcasted some games in the Fullerton and Anaheim and Garden Grove area, a lot of those schools are suffering and have taken out JV programs. So they do have freshman programs, but then there's no JV programs. And coaches will tell us, they'll tell us straight up is like that really hurts the sophomores and juniors development, right? Because that's a big period for them to because it's hard to be a sophomore and jump right to that varsity level. And if you're not getting the playing time on Friday or Thursday nights that you would be getting if you were playing on JV, it can kind of be discouraging. And I could see why a lot of kids would quit after their sophomore season, not thinking about, hey, I'm going to earn my playing time, my junior and Caesar season too, once down the road.
Exactly. And how's the broadcasting gig going for you? I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, it was a class or internship that you sign up for at Fullerton College. And so, I had the luxury of interviewing a lot of coaches and players at the Fullerton College level, doing a lot of their games. But a big part of what the last few fall seasons and something that I really enjoyed is we would do the high school games in the area. And for the most part, it was either Fullerton High School or games at Glover Stadium, which is in Anaheim. And a lot of times the Anaheim teams play there. So like Catella High School, Loera, Anaheim High School, Savannah, I'm Magnolia. We did a Magnolia game, and a lot of times they played Garden Grove schools. I also work with kids in the Garden Grove area too. So at the middle school level, I'm actually going to start coaching high school next year. Depends on how this works out after COVID-19. But so I've been able to hear around in those like three major cities from Fullerton, Anaheim, and Garden Grove, and you're seeing a lot of dwindling numbers, and to where teams can't even fill JV teams, and varsity rosters are 35. I've seen small rosters, about 35, 40 kids on a roster. And I'm just like, wow, that's crazy.
That's awesome. And what any position concentrated or just a coach?
Linebacker and safety. So
Nice.
defense, they haven't told me specifically which one, but they said it'll either be one of those two. So I'm really excited. I was always more of I wasn't the most physically gifted player, so I had to learn to succeed in different ways, right? It had to be studying the film and, reading guards, that kind of stuff. So I'm excited to kind of teach that back to kids at the youth level and help them out.
There you go. That's awesome.
Hmm. So I did want to ask you too, if you don't mind sharing. You were supposed to have a wedding next weekend,
Yep.
on May 2nd. How has that affected just they're planning for the wedding, and how hard was it, and how sudden was it that you had to all of a sudden reschedule to a later date?
Well, I was supposed to have my bachelor party in Las Vegas the first week of March Madness, and
Okay.
I think it was that week that when Las Vegas shut down, I was supposed to go. And once that happened, I was like, okay, is this going to be not a possibility to pull off because we were in March at the time, and May 2nd was about 6 weeks away. So, we unfortunately made the decision pretty quickly because we knew a lot of other couples. We actually had some friends' weddings to go to before ours, who started to postpone. And so to get a date in September, which it's actually going to be September 4th now, we acted pretty quickly. And all of our vendors were really easy to work with, and we weren't canceling on them. So they were saying like, yeah, I know we'll completely help you guys out and just move it over. So those are companies that I'm going to go back to once this is all over and leave a great review, and say like, hey, they didn't hassle me. They didn't charge me extra. During these tough times, they moved it over. So it was great to see all my wedding vendors do that.
Man, that's really great to hear. Shout out to those companies for, being able to work with you through all this.